we had session scheduled, and then we actually went to session and had session, which did not happen every time in the last my first 4 years here. But my comments are really to talk about 2012 and moving forward. I don't think there's going to be any question that the focus of this body is going to be the economy and what we can do to help the private sector create jobs. And that's I've looked through the people here that some I've only served briefly with, but it really is I think the lodestone, if you will, of what this caucus is about. Certainly Ohioans and their families are struggling. I see this really on a daily basis in my business. Back at home, I represent, as a private attorney, probably about 3 dozen businesses. At a meeting last week with a husband and a wife who own a small carpet cleaning business. The two of them go out and clean carpets, and they're thinking about buying another van because they have a lot of business, but they're not sure if about the economy and whether they can borrow the money. All of those things. They want to make sure that the tax burden is something that they can afford. And, you know, we tend to talk about, well, are we going to get another automobile manufacturer or those kinds of home runs? But there are literally millions of businesses in the state of Ohio made up of 2 and 4 and 10 people that are creating jobs and making our economy go. And we have to create an environment that allows those people to be successful. And we know that there's not going to be a federal bailout. President Obama has made that clear, and he's made it clear because they don't have any money. The federal government is more than $15 trillion in debt. That's not counted the unfunded liabilities in Social Security, Medicare, and all of those things. So simply put, the crisis in Washington is monumentally more severe than it is in any of the states. Certainly here in the state of Ohio. We're mostly going to talk about what's happening, but we need to, for a couple reasons, need to talk about Senate Bill 5, and I need to talk about that. The first reason is our communications director, Mike Ditto, always assigns me the unpopular things to talk about at press conferences, so that's why I got this one. Thank you, Mike. You know, first of all, Senate Bill 5, of course, is just one of actually 92 bills that went through the House. And the first thing I think that Governor Kasich said, and I said to our local media, is there's no question about the message that voters delivered. They didn't like the bill. And we all sort of do a Monday morning quarterback about, well, hey, if this had been this way or that way. And I think the simple answer is that the public didn't want an all-encompassing bill that looked to them in many respects like it was overreaching. There are, obviously, you can look at all the polling, things like that, many parts to that effort which are popular with the public. And those things need to get addressed at some point. I think that they can't get addressed unless we have local jurisdictions, of which there are, I think, 2,200, including school districts and villages, counties, and cities, stepping forward and saying we want, you know, this particular proposal to be adopted. And I think we've all heard from a variety of local officials about that. But, you know, the problems that that bill attempted to address continue to exist. You know, not in my district, but in a county just south of me, the school teachers have delivered their strike notice. It appears they're going to go out and strike. I'm not even sure the last time there was a strike. But these issues are going to continue in the state of Ohio, many of them, until they're addressed. And some of them, you know, simply by the nature of our democracy, can't be addressed, at least with the majority of the public. But we certainly need to do that. And we have to have input from all of these officials. But, you know, it's clear that there is not a pot of gold in Columbus that is going to get delivered to local officials. And I was speaking a couple weeks ago at a Kiwanis meeting, and the president of the club happened to be both a township trustee and a owner of a local store that sold farm implements. And he had he had two questions. One is, when are we getting rid of the cat tax? And the second question was, when is there going to be more money for townships? And he wanted me to answer them at the same time. And I said, you know, your two questions embody the very issue about government, which is, we need more money, but we don't need more taxes. And that was really what was extraordinary about the budget last year, is we needed $8 billion and we didn't raise taxes. Is everybody happy? No. And I don't think necessarily, again, that in this year there's a pot of gold at the end of the rainbow. Perhaps Representative Amstutz will come through with one. I'm not sure. We do have, however, I think, an excellent legislative agenda. These are some things I think that are going to be, we're going to be able to move on, that are going to be very popular. I'm not going to talk about them in detail because, again, I don't talk about the popular things. Just kidding, Mike. Representative Derrickson is going to talk about workforce development next, but also reform in Bureau of Workers' Compensation, which I think is critical. That's one of the number one issues that businesses have brought to me, actually in the 20 years in practicing law before I came to the legislature, is that same refrain, which is, you know, we haven't had an accident in 10 years, and my premium just got doubled from the Bureau of Workers' Compensation. It's a huge problem, and frankly does not happen in other private insurance markets. So to the extent that how that's reformed, obviously Representative Sears is going to talk about that, but it's a critical issue. Representatives Hagan and DeVille will also talk about Development Services Agency, and then Representative Amstutz after that will talk about school funding and K-12 reform hearings, which I think are really kind of also at the top of everyone's mind. So thank you for your attention today. I'll introduce Representative Derrickson.